Start my record now. Hey now, everyone. It is Matt Haywood, your host for the latest installment of our Star Wars-centric Budacast. And we had a previous topic that Nick and I want to talk about, but we decided to kind of change gears a bit due to some of the hot news coming out of the Rogue One, a Star Wars story camp this week. So instead of focusing our discussion on the Clone Wars cartoon series, which I kind of prodded Nick into checking out, and he listened to me like a good Padawan and has found that it is actually quite good and has the only redeeming stories from the prequel era in the Star Wars franchise. So we'll come back to that at a later date because I definitely want to talk about the Clone Wars cartoon because I truly believe, as Nick has found out, especially once you get into the later seasons, that it's some of the best stories revolving around Anakin and his inner workings and why he was always kind of torn between being good chosen one and taking advantage of his force powers to kind of get what he wants. So we'll come back to that, but what we want to talk about, people, and if you are a Star Wars nut like Nick and I, you're probably well aware of the news coming out of Disney this week that a certain group of executives, probably a bunch of rich white men in suits, maybe some rich women in suits, but probably a bunch of old, rich Hollywood insider type of guys, have taken umbrage with the first cut of Gareth Edwards' Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And before I bring Nick in, I mean, essentially the deal is that there's a rumor out there. A lot of people are saying it's confirmed. Who knows? But basically, the film's going back for reshoots this month. And apparently, it is being done because the executives feel that the tone of Rogue One does not match the tone of the classic Star Wars trilogy. All right, so big movies like this get reshoots, Nick. That's not the big news. The big news is potentially why Rogue One is getting reshoots and how extensive they will be. So, first off, we know they want more fun and levity in a film, even though this film, to me, should be nothing but depressing and slightly heartwarming at the end when they succeed in their mission. And two, something I consider to be probably an even bigger mistake if they do it would be to force in a cameo of the young Han Solo. So that's kind of what we've heard, Nick, so far about why these reshoots are taking place. It isn't just simply, this scene didn't work, we need to fix it. It's sounding like there's some pretty serious concerns over what these executives saw. So what's your spin on it?
I really think that this is a mistake. Obviously, we haven't seen the first cut of it, but like you said, this is a dark film. This is a film that's about, spies, a hardcore Black Ops mission to go in and steal these plans of the first Death Star and then make it out with your lives. So obviously, this isn't going to have all of the campy fun that some of the Star Wars films have. But it's not like we haven't seen a dark Star Wars film before. I mean, like one of the best Star Wars movies in existence is Episode 5, which has a tonally darker feel to it than all the rest of the Star Wars movies. So to me it's a little odd that they decided that this movie, which is set in, the original trilogy time period where you have the Empire that is, pretty much ruling the galaxy. It's a dark time period, and I think that it says it in one of the crawls. It is a dark time for the rebellion.
They were still, and Rebels has shown a little bit of the rebellion much sooner than even what we're going to see at state in Rogue One. So if you haven't watched that cartoon, it's another one I recommend getting into. Everybody, just because these cartoons actually tell good prequel stories. That's the crux of my push on that stuff. But yeah, I mean the rebellion is a very tiny group of systems, not even systems, I'd say planets, right? I mean, it's not even like full systems buy into rebellion because the Empire, through Palpatine, the Clone Wars, the fake Separatist War, and eventually his henchman Darth Vader, have ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. They don't like you. They'll come in. Vader will fuck you up. I mean, Vader takes out battalions by himself. We know his awesomeness, and hopefully we get to see that in a Rogue One, but not if it's going to be all jovial and fun and very full of levity. But, that's kind of what we're getting at here. So I'm with Nick. I actually wrote an editorial on it today, basically saying I'm concerned over the rumors of why the reshoots are taking place. So let's get this clear, people, especially you nut jobs out there. Both Nick and I understand that movies of this size can go through reshoots. I believe The Force Awakens had a period of pickups. A lot of movies with huge budgets and special effects are going to have pickups. So that news doesn't concern me. Like I said, and in my piece, that concerns me is why they want to do it and this levity and fun thing. I mean, from day one, have we not been pitched on this movie being a war film, Nick, right? I mean, Gareth Edwards flat out said this is a war movie. War movies, and like I said, if you want to throw some levity into it, maybe throw in some Star Wars one-liners or some Han Solo quips here or there. But I don't think this film needs to have long moments of lighthearted fun.
Yeah,
I just don't see how that fits.
I totally agree. I mean, you don't need a Jar Jar Binks character in this movie. You don't need some bullshit like that. I mean, and it's really surprising to me too, is after the reception that the initial trailer got. Like, the initial trailer got a lot of positive reception from people. Now, obviously,
we did a full cast on it. We basically jerked it off online on our podcast.
It was incredible, and you got to see a lot of that war style action in it. You got to see the beach scene with the giant AT-ATs and the rebels running through the fire. You got to see, Jyn Erso and her what is probably her spy outfit that she used to get onto the Death Star. I mean, there are so many good things about that fit thematically with a war movie that people really gravitated towards. And now we hear that the execs aren't really feeling that tone anymore. It's a little weird. And like you said, Matt, that like we knew that this was going to be like a darker war type movie from the beginning. So it's really concerning that the execs decided to do these reshoots and to add in this levity after the entire film had already wrapped filming.
Now, let's stick to this levity thing, Nick, here. Do you really feel like the classic films are that lighthearted and fun?
No. And that's where I don't understand where this is coming from. Like, even episode 4 where they did, like, I can't remember specific gags from the original trilogy. I mean, like, you had
it's C-3PO and R2-D2.
Yeah,
their banter. I mean, C-3PO being just a dick to R2-D2.
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty much it. I mean, you had heartwarming little moments, like when Leia and Han had the "I love you, I know" exchange in episode 5. You had, obviously, in episode 6, you had the entire second half of the movie that involved the Ewoks. So that was there to a degree. But I mean, it wasn't like the levity and the gags that you see in stuff like, Civil War or the Marvel franchise. The Marvel franchise is built off of action and comedy, kind of meshing together and working well.
Right.
And I think that Disney is kind of trying to skew that way a little bit with Star Wars because they've seen such a massive success with Marvel using that formula. But that's not the Star Wars that we love. Obviously, you had more of that kind of stuff in the prequels, but you also have, like, Disney has to remember that the prequels were almost universally hated. So it's a better idea.
Now, how'd you think The Force Awakens handled this new Star Wars mantra of them having to be fun and levitiosis? There's a word for you, people.
I think it handled it pretty well because it didn't feel forced. Like, you didn't hear a story that, Bob Iger was like, J.J. Abrams, you need to add in more fun moments into this movie. It felt natural. Like, the interactions between Finn and Rey felt natural. The interactions between Poe and Finn felt natural. So obviously you had a piece in there. You had a character in there that was intentionally brought in to bring levity.
And I still found that the gags were relegated to the droids. I mean, BB-8's lighter thumb flip got a huge laugh the first time.
Yeah.
Kylo's temper tantrums got a laugh. The stormtroopers walking down the hallway and hearing him go nuts and then just turn around. But those weren't just obvious fucking stupid gags. They made sense for what was happening.
Exactly.
And like you said, they weren't forced, and we'll never know now. Like the final cut of Rogue One we get, who knows whose ultimate vision that's going to be? Is it going to be the people that actually write film stories and actually work in filmmaking, or is it going to be the vision of the people that foot the bill? I would rather the artist's vision come through and not the guy funding the artist.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And then, I mean, there's a ton of rumors out there, and we don't know what's true and what's not. I mean, we've heard that up to 40% of this film is being reshot, which is insane. That, to me, that is completely ridiculous. We are
that's got to be bullshit. That's got to be someone just making a mountain out of a molehill. Because if they really want to release this in December and they get to shoot almost half the movie, there's no way they could reprocess all the digital shots and whatnot to have it in the can in less than 6 months.
I agree. I mean. So, I mean, that report came out of MakingStarWars.com. I don't know where they got it from. I don't know who their sources are.
They've been good. I mean, they've hit on some things, but a lot of people today have really kind of opened some shit on them, like, because they were just throwing out the McQuarrie stuff, and McQuarrie went on record today saying, "This is bullshit. I'm not overseeing anything. Who knows how much they're redoing? I trust Gareth. It's a bunch of nonsense. You should retract the story, essentially."
Yeah.
So I think it is fanboy sites or whatnot, kind of just maybe clickbaiting things a little bit.
I agree.
I'm not usually guilty of that because I'm not a huge clickbait fan, but I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes if I feel like Entertainment Buddha needs a shot in the arm, I may get a little clickbaity in my title. So I think a lot of this shit we're coming out post the Tuesday. That's when the story first broke. I think a lot of it is starting to just get sensationalized by the community.
Agreed. And you also have to remember, too, that, like, they came out on Tuesday and said that reshoot time was already built into this production schedule. So they knew that there was going to be reshoots. So I don't know if, like, people saw that the reshoot schedule was starting to happen, and then they were like, oh, shit, and then they just decided to sensationalize it, or if there's actual, like, concern behind this. Obviously, some of the Disney execs have said that there is a tonal shift that they want to make, but that's not necessary. Like, I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, because it depends on where they put in the levity. Like, if you have moments of levity in between the action, like in the planning phases, like when they're in the war room trying to decide how they're gonna get in, if somebody cracks a joke in there or something like that, then it's not going to be a big deal. But like if it's going to be in the middle of like a high intensity action scene, that it's clearly like this is clearly a pivotal moment in the film, and you're just going to start cracking wise, then like it doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, they break out an old battle droid and they start going, Roger, 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 Roger. Or C-3PO comes out in his battle droid body.
I mean, it's...
Oh, man, yeah, it could go either way. I mean, like you said, if it's sprinkled in at the right moment and we can't tell that it was shoved in there, who cares?
Yeah.
And it probably would be nice to kind of lighten the mood a bit.
I mean, do you think that this has to do with Batman versus Superman?
I'm glad you went there, because that's exactly where I was headed next. I was going to say, Nick, do you feel that some of this is fallout from BVS? And I'll be the first one. I'll go on record. I liked BVS. I like DC. I love Marvel too, but I've always, DC first, Superman, Batman, those are my homeboys. Either way, I like the film. It's not a perfect film by any means. It really isn't. It was a little long. I actually think the Ultimate Edition, which is going to be even longer, is probably going to be even better because, again, it's going to be Snyder's vision. It's rated R. There's a whole bunch of new shit in there. But the reason a lot of critics fucking hated it is because it wasn't a Marvel movie. There weren't jokes. There was no levity whatsoever. I mean, it was a fucking serious, depressing, just dark-ass movie. I didn't find an issue with that. I liked it. I don't feel like every comic book movie has to have one-liners and zings in it. I think DC can treat its properties a little more dark.
Yeah.
But I think it is executives looking at this like, oh, fuck, if we get critics coming out and saying this movie's too serious, we're fucked. Because it fucked BVS. Fucked it. It fucked all of Warner Brothers' plans for DC movies. I mean, fucked it royally based on critics.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Zack Snyder is now almost relegated to, like, just a directing role. He almost has no like creative input in these movies
Yeah, I mean,
anymore.
he was like he wasn't Kevin Feige, but he almost was, plus a director for all these DC movies.
Yeah, so I mean, he's really been slapped down due to all of the critical, negativity about that
Well,
movie.
yeah, like David Goyer. I don't know if he's writing films anymore. It's like Jeff Johns is going to be over everything.
I mean,
and-
Affleck is supposed to have more of an input now. Obviously, he has his own solo Batman film that he's starring in and directing. So, I mean, that's going to be interesting to see. But, like, my issue with Batman versus Superman was not the tone of it. I mean, because, like you said, that story in itself is a very dark and depressing story. My issues with that film lay mostly in the writing. I felt that the writing was really poor, and that the continuity and the way that the story was told was very choppy, and it kind of fit with Snyder's mantra, like his
yeah, no, he's all visual.
Yeah, exactly.
The guy is a visual genius. I mean, that you can't say that Batman versus Superman looks shitty. I mean, it looks fantastic. The guy has a great mind for cinematography and shots and action. But you're right. I mean, the fucking Superman was as cardboard as it gets. I mean, he just felt like a fucking robot this time around. I thought Batman was fantastic. The other shit was a little weird. Like, it's not a perfect movie. I probably even gave it a little bit higher than it should. I think I gave it an 80. But I enjoyed it. I saw it twice. I didn't think it was that bad. But I really do think that some of this fallout, if it is fallout with Rogue One, are the executives looking at the bottom line. Because in the end, and I guess we can't fault them for that, because their job is to drive up stock prices by pushing people to the box office. So they got to make sure they're doing their job so they don't get fired. But I hate when art starts to get influenced by cash.
I 100% agree. And I mean, Batman vs. Superman was a movie that was supposed to blow up the box office. Obviously, it was supposed to make $1 billion worldwide. I think it ended up making around $850 million. So it fell a little bit short.
Which isn't
bad.
Shabby,
No.
but they were expecting it to make billions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're coming off of Star Wars Episode 7 making, I think, $1.2 billion worldwide in its initial theatrical run. So it had.
And then you have Civil War, which you could sort of compare to BVS with a bunch of cast of characters. It's probably already over $1 billion.
Yeah, it's close if it's not already there. And then you also have to remember that Disney has this big number sitting in the back of its head of I think it's between $4 and $6 billion for which it purchased Star Wars from George Lucas. So obviously they're well on the way to making all of that money back, if not already there, with, like you said, toy licensing.
Oh shit, dude! It's gravy at this point.
Yeah. So I don't know if the executives are just overly worried about getting to that number quickly so they can start just be in the green from the rest of the way out. But there's definitely something behind this that isn't all creative, and that's what I'm worried about. Because I'd like to see. I mean, I hope it doesn't come to a point to where we have to hope for like a Superman 2 Richard Donner cut to see what this movie was really going to be like. But
yeah, no, it's a good point, because that was the same type of deal. They were giving him a bunch of shit for his vision, and he was pushing back, and they're like, all right, fuck it, this is the movie we're releasing, suck our dicks.
Yeah.
And then his cut came out a little bit later on that had more of a home slice in it and this, that, and the other thing. But it happens, people. I mean, let's be real. The movie industry, first and foremost, is about money. It's not really about entertainment and art. It's about cash. Cash rules everything around me. Cream, get your money, dollar bills, y'all, right? The Wu-Tang Clan said it best. So it sucks. Let's hope for the best. I do want to move on to the next concerning part of this rumor. And to me, I think this could be even more of a travesty if it goes through. And that is crowbarring in a cameo of Han Solo being played by Alden. Is it Elric or Elric?
It's Aaron Reich.
Aaron Reich.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah. It's
in Rogue One. So Nick, I'll let you open that one up, because I think we kind of think the same way. It just timeline wise, it just does not make sense to introduce such an iconic character being played by such a different looking actor.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had a short conversation about this before we even started this cast. I think it was yesterday. But like, basically what you're doing is you're taking a movie that was already finished being filmed and then opening up some sort of spot for a character that was literally just cast. I mean, Alden Ehrenreich was cast as the new young Han Solo 2 weeks ago, I think, or maybe even less than that. So one, they didn't have anything planned for him to start with. So they're by definition forcing him into this movie just to build buzz for the young Han Solo film. Two, like you said, he really doesn't look like Harrison Ford. The problem with recasting or casting anybody as a young Han Solo is that there is already a young Han Solo. I mean, Harrison Ford played Han Solo in the exact same time period that this movie is taking place. So it's going to feel weird to have him in there. And
That's the rub right there. I mean, it's the fact that the timelines are literally going to be separated by 10 fucking minutes. I mean, I know I've read that somewhere, but essentially, Rogue One ends essentially 10 minutes before that opening scene in A New Hope.
yeah, I mean, basically, it's like we said in the Rogue One cast. That movie is essentially going to end with the Tantive 4 flying off with the plans. I mean, that's probably how it's going to come to an end. And if you've seen Episode 4, which I'm assuming that everybody's listening to this cast has, like, that's when that movie opens. The movie opens with the Star Destroyer's assault on the Tantive 4 and then Darth Vader coming in and wrecking shop. So, and the problem with it is, concerning Han Solo, is that at that time period, he was not associated with the rebellion. So where are you going to put him in? He can't be in the planning. Because at that time, he was still just a smuggler running from Jabba the Hutt. We know this from Episode 4. He's on the run because he dropped, a smuggling shipment that he was running for Jabba. And that's why Greedo, assaults him in the cantina. So where are you going to fit him in? Is this just going to be like a passing kind of, hey, we bumped into each other on Tatooine? Or like, what's this going to be? It just feels so forced, so out of place. And like, if they give him a significant role in this movie, I really think that it could just go bad places.
It would fuck it up in my opinion. Because you can't do it like you said, and I bring this up in the same piece I was talking about earlier about bitching about the tone. When they cast Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, it worked because we only knew old Ben. We only knew Sir Alec Guinness, white hair, bearded Obi-Wan Kenobi. There was no reference material to a young Obi-Wan and what he looked like. So you could take a Ewan McGregor who shared some features to Alec Guinness and cast him as a young Obi-Wan. It made complete sense. It worked well. I thought Ewan was one of the highlights of the prequels. Now, but you can't flip around and do that with Han Solo, who is a more iconic character than Ben Kenobi, and B, as Nick brought up, in this timeline, we know what Han Solo looks like. He looks like Harrison Ford did in 1977. If you look at this Alden kid, there is zero resemblance. Like, they didn't even fucking try. At least in my opinion, right? I mean, do you think this kid looks like him whatsoever?
No, not really. There was one kid that was up for it. I think his name was Scott Eastwood, who looked close. I mean, like, he looked really close to Han. I mean, to Harrison Ford back in the day, but they went a different direction, and obviously it had to do with acting chops in some way.
I mean, when I first heard about the young Han Solo movie, I'm like, hey, whatever, it's Star Wars. I'll watch any of it. I don't care. But the more you think about it, again, you're like, well, how can you do that? I mean, wait, is it going to be like adolescent Han, teen Han?
Yeah, I mean,
maybe 20s Han, but outside that, I don't think you can tell a young Han Solo story where he's in his 30s or whatever, like he was in A New Hope. You just can't.
No, and that was my concern. Is like, I was okay with a young Han Solo movie as long as you went back, but by putting him in this movie, it's essentially saying that you're going to shoot a young Han Solo movie that's going to happen in generally the same time period that Episode 4 did, which is really concerning because, one, what story are you going to tell? Are you going to tell the story of how he got into shit with Jabba? I don't know if that's going to be good. I assumed that the story was going to be how him and Chewie met, which is kind of how, like...
Me too.
Like, that's what everybody wants to know. They're the iconic best friend, duo in American cinema. So, like, to tell that story would be fitting, and it would be really kind of,
And don't we have extended universe versions of their meeting? Wasn't Han in the Imperial or training to be Imperial, and he was on
He was on a
He
prison planet where,
Yeah, and like the Trandoshans were enslaving the Wookiees or whatever, and he freed Chewie, and Chewie swore a life debt to him,
yeah,
or this, that, and the other thing.
yeah. I mean, that's basically the story. So it would have been really cool because you would get to see a Han Solo that is essentially in the same boat that Finn was in Episode 7. He was in the Imperial Army. He didn't really want to be. He was probably, just did that because he needed some sort of living to make. And then he sees this Wookiee, and you know, essentially he's in a prison camp, probably doing labor or something like that, and builds a bond with him, and then frees him, breaks his way out, and then kind of exiles himself from the Imperial Army and becomes a smuggler. I mean, that would be an incredible story to tell, but I don't know if you can tell that story now because of the way you're shoehorning this young Han Solo into this film. Is it gonna? It makes it seem like it would be too far separated. Like you already have him being in this film, which is going to be right at the same time as Episode 4. So how far can you go back before it's too far? Before it feels like the character that's in Rogue One should be a different character that's in the young Han Solo movie.
Yeah, I mean, in my piece, I said if this happens, I think the only way it works is if it's a flashback of some sort, where maybe a Jin flashback or some sort of flashback with a character we know or a main character in Rogue One, and they literally walk by Han Solo just standing there, and it's like you said, just a passing by type of shot. Or you might see the Falcon with him sitting next to it. I just don't think he can be incorporated into this movie within its timeline and it make any sense for a young Han Solo. Because all I'm going to think about is that's not fucking Harrison Ford. That's not Han Solo. That's an imposter. Fuck him.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about this movie is that we're going back to a time period where we all are familiar with it. We all love the original trilogy time period, and we're using all new characters. I mean, aside from Mon Mothma and I can't remember the general's name who gave the attack plan for the first.
I think it's Dodonna.
Yeah, Dodonna. So like those are the only two recognizable characters that we have, and honestly, they weren't even big players in the original trilogy. So you have this entire cast of new characters that's fitting right into this old timeline that we're already familiar with, and that's the good part about it, is you don't have to look at characters and say, well, they don't look like the person from the original trilogy, or this character is portrayed differently than they were in Episode 4. We have an entire new cast of characters to look at, to become accustomed to, and it just feels weird that you're shoving somebody in who's already known.
It's a very dangerous practice in any form of art. I mean, this is off topic, but I'm thinking about the day when Hugh Jackman walks away from Wolverine, which he said he's doing after this last movie. I mean, he's literally played that guy for 16 years. To me, Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. So people even younger than me, he's Wolverine. So when they do have to find a new Wolverine, and the way they may do it is actually have a female version, which honestly is probably the best scenario for them.
Yeah.
Because that's an easy break. All right, Hugh's done. Female Wolverine. Boom. Makes sense. We can bring in a new actress. Done. But when you want to do something like you're doing Han Solo, especially if they're going to do it rumored to put him in Rogue One, that doesn't work. It's either got to be how they did it in the prequels, where you had just a very old version of a character with no reference to a young, or vice versa. You cannot just slap in a character of that prominence in a franchise and just expect most of the audience to just buy into it. I mean, we all have to, those of us that love these science fiction or fantasy properties, yes, we all suspend disbeliefs. It's all fake. None of it's real. I get that. But sometimes, especially with a character like Han, it's, to me, I think it would be impossible.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And like with Han Solo, it's outside of just the fantasy realm and like, geeks like us, because Han Solo is one of the most iconic characters in American film. I mean, he's transcended the fantasy genre. He's transcended the, geekdom. He has risen to a level that he is globally recognizable regardless of your fandom, of your...
Oh, shit, man. I mean, some people hated The Force Awakens because of what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I got emotional. Obviously, like, we are massive.
Oh, the first
Star
time
Wars
I saw
fans.
it, I mean, maybe the second time, the third, fourth time I saw it, I still
I mean,
teared
like,
up a
it
little bit. I
still
mean,
hits
it
me.
was sad. He's a huge character.
Yeah, I mean, it still hits me. I mean, I have obviously we both have the Blu-ray. We probably watch it every so often. It still hits me, and I actually went into that movie with an inkling, with a kind of knowing that he was gonna die. Like,
See, I don't know why I didn't think that. I somehow avoided all that shit. Like when Snoke says to him, "Your father," I'm like, "What?" And then when they pair up, I kind of had an idea where it was going to go, but then when it happened, I was like, "What?"
yeah,
It was beautiful. It's what they need to do, and now we all know why Harrison Ford was so gung ho to fucking get back into Star Wars.
yeah,
Because he finally got his wish.
yeah,
And I think tonally, it achieved exactly what JJ was going for, to be like, listen, hey, we know you guys love the original characters, but 7, 8, 9, it's about these 3 or 4 characters. These guys are there to support them and to prop them up. And the best way to do that is have one of them fucking kill one of the most iconic characters in the franchise.
exactly. And now I really feel bad, and I know we're shitting on this already. And I already feel bad for Alden, the character, like the guy who's playing young Han.
Right, it's not his fault. I
Yeah.
don't hate the guy.
I mean, and not like it's not just that; it's that he is now given an impossible burden to become. You basically have to become Harrison Ford, because the way
another great point by Nick. People, that's why I let this guy on the Star Wars cast. That's exactly what I put in my piece, again, as another argument against doing it so early in the timeline. I still believe if it's the Han Solo movie set way in the past where he might be in his teens or early 20s, okay, I think I can get behind that, the Alden kid, whatever. But like you said, if it's going to be in the timeline, he would have to be a Ford mimic. And I mean, Ford has a very distinct delivery, look, cadence, stance, facial movements. And if you want to pair them up, essentially saying they're from the same timeline, at that point, I'd rather them just fucking make one of those young movie clones, like we saw Robert Downey Jr. in Civil War, or what was the other, or Michael Douglas in Ant-Man.
Yeah.
I'd rather them just CG the fuck out of Harrison and throw him in there.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, everything about that performance was unique to Harrison Ford. I mean, like, just thinking about the movies now, I can picture specific facial expressions, specific ways he delivered lines.
Yeah.
And just the overall bravado of the character is so unique to Harrison that not only does this kid have to come in and now be thrown into a movie that he wasn't intended to be in, he has to mimic that performance, and he has to live up to that almost larger than life, character that Harrison Ford created back in 1977. So I mean,
yeah, and I'm not saying Ford's a hack either, because I think Indy is a different character than Han. His Clear and Present Danger guy was different than Han and Indy. His Blade Runner guy was different. I'm not saying he's the same actor in every role. I'm just saying when he plays Han Solo, it's a very distinct delivery and act that he puts
yeah,
on.
I mean, you could see it in Episode 7 when he was playing Han in Episode 7. You didn't feel like it was Harrison Ford trying to recreate that character. At least I didn't. I felt like that's Han Solo again.
It's Han fucking Solo.
Yeah.
The only one that felt like it was an actor trying to recreate the character was Leia.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Just because Carrie Fisher, poor thing, hasn't acted much, nor do I think she wants to act. So
yeah, I mean, you can't turn down that payday, though, right?
well, I mean, she had to do it.
Yeah.
And I know you watch behind the scenes, but I believe JJ, or even she might have said, like, yeah, she was very nervous and wasn't feeling it, wasn't getting it, because she hadn't really done a real role in years and years and years. So
yeah, I mean,
whatever. It's I
mean,
I don't know, man.
That's definitely the most concerning part for me.
Well, I agree.
And
I mean, out of the two rumors about these reshoots, the cameo to me could just derail not only Rogue One, but the entire Han Solo standalone.
Yeah, and I mean, we could be totally off. I mean, the kid could only be in it for like 30 seconds, and it would just be fine. So, I mean, right now we're just kind of throwing up a worst case scenario with this cameo, but we don't know what his cameo is going to be. We don't even know if it's going to be.
It may not even be in there. That's the thing, guys. We're speculating like the rest of you. Nothing we're saying is fact. We collect shit on the internet that probably has a little truth to it, probably not as much as we'd like to believe. but something's up with this film.
Yeah.
This story wouldn't break if people weren't talking about it.
It wouldn't break, one, and it wouldn't live as long as it has. I mean, we're talking it broke Tuesday, and we're talking about it on a Friday, and there's still new details coming out. Like, the filming was happening before the script was even finished. Is one of the things that they're saying now. It's like the script was constantly being revised, while Edwards was filming.
Right, which could turn into a movie like the last film, The Hobbit. I mean, Peter Jackson came out and said, he's like, we were fucking making shit up as we went.
Yeah.
The Hobbit film's definitely not as good as Lord of the Rings films. Still pretty huge films and good. And if you watch the extended version of the Battle of Five Armies, you can see the true vision, and it's a 10 times better movie. So, yeah, that is troubling. Anytime you start hearing about scripts weren't finished, major reshoots, films coming out in 6 months, it's scary.
Yeah, to me, the best thing that they could do right now is delay the release and then get this shit sorted out. Because if you're going to try to crunch up to, I mean, again, this is another rumor. They're saying 8 weeks of reshoots. If that is true, you're going to crunch 8 weeks of reshoots and then try to go into post and then be finished in 4 months. That's a very large task.
Yeah. Good luck.
So just,
it could be the new Fantastic Four.
Oh,
I mean, it could
God.
come out after that. Gareth Edwards is like, yeah, they fucking tied my hands, and then they're saying, well, Gareth was a dick face. That's what was going on with Josh Trank and all that shit.
Yeah.
I really don't see Disney letting it get to that point. I mean,
honestly, I'm surprised that it has gotten to this point. I mean, Kathleen
right.
Kennedy has had like a pretty strong hold.
Well, she's not even mixed up in this one.
Oh, she isn't?
I don't think.
Well, that's...
I mean, I haven't seen her name in any of the articles.
Yeah, that's surprising. Now that
But no, you are right. I mean, she is the president of Lucasfilm, so I mean, it's under her umbrella. I would think so.
Yeah, I mean, so far, I mean, even after kind of George went away when he still owned Lucasfilms, like Kathleen Kennedy had a pretty good, stranglehold on the Star Wars franchise. She was making sure that shit was airtight and everything was running like a well-oiled machine. And just to see like all this kind of shit happening and her name not even being brought up is kind of disconcerting. I mean, where is she in all of this?
Right. I mean, that to me, it almost hints that it's probably legit. If it wasn't legit, you'd think she'd come out right away and squash it.
Yeah. It's
like, hey, fuck this, or even someone from Disney coming out and saying, hey, this is fucking stupid.
I mean,
we have reshoots, but they're planned. Don't worry about it, people. The movie's shaping up greatly. Let's go for it. The fact that, now we talk about it, the fact that none of them have just come out and flatly denied things outside of Chris McQuarrie could point to some of it being legit.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, like, even Edwards hasn't come out and said anything, and you would figure that on a high-profile...
Well, that poor guy, he probably feels like a pile of shit.
Yeah.
Because now everyone like us, we're all pointing fingers at him like, Gareth, don't you fuck up my Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
And he will be the one to take the fall.
It's dangerous. And actually, like, mentioning Josh Trank from Fantastic Four...
He was going to do a Star Wars
he was on a Star Wars film, and then they heard about all that shit happening at Fox with Fantastic Four, and they pulled him off of that, and they were like, get the fuck out of here. Like, we don't need this. So, I mean... I feel like there's a lot of people who are in a really tough spot right now. You have Edwards, the director. You have Chris McQuarrie, who is the main screenwriter. And then you have, the execs who are obviously the ones ordering these reshoots. I mean, there's a lot to be concerned about here. There's not a lot of information out there. There's not a lot of information out there from people that are in reputable positions that we can turn to. We can't talk to... Kathleen Kennedy. We haven't heard anything from Bob Iger or from Gareth Edwards. I mean, we don't have any kind of reliable information to go off of. So, I mean, basically what we have to go off of is what all of these journalists are putting out there now, and you don't have anybody shooting it down, which... Yeah, it's really...
Right, which leads to people like us sitting here dumping more fuel on the fire.
Yeah.
We don't even know it's legit. That's what we do, people. That's what super fans do. We take this stuff seriously, and we need to voice our minds. So, one thing before we wrap, Nick, and it's just been bothering me. In A New Hope, do they not essentially say, and I believe it would be Dodonna, does he not say we lost a great many of troops to get these plans? I know in Jedi, Mothma
The
says we lost,
Bothans,
or
yeah.
the Bothans died to get these plans, but doesn't he, or him or Leia at one point in that movie say something about the sacrifice of those that got the original Death Star
I
plans?
think so. Yeah, I think it was when.
Right. So I mean, that right there, going back to the fun and levity. I mean, we've probably already established that this is a suicide mission. That there's a good chance that this Jyn Erso is toast.
Yeah, like Jyn Erso
Or-
and
or
everybody
with her-
involved.
Yeah, with her dying breath, she gets that message transmitted to the Tantive. I mean, so yeah, it's not a fun, light-hearted.
Yeah,
movie,
no, I
that's my
mean,
point.
like, what do you expect to have? Like, how are you going to add levity into if that is one of the scenes?
I just always figured
like,
that
what are you going to add?
we're gonna introduce these characters. We're probably gonna appreciate them and enjoy them, but by the end of the movie, they're all gonna be fucking killed.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean,
And
I don't see how it goes any other way. Because why wouldn't this character then show up in the rebellion? Because she would have been considered, at least I would think, a fucking major
I would
hero.
say she is a hero of the rebellion at that point, and the
Yeah.
only reason for her not to be mentioned is because she's dead, or because I mean, like, I don't know what other way they could spin it, but like to me, she has to die, and that's like the main thing that kind of drew me into this movie is that you have these characters that are essentially
Yeah.
going on this suicide
This
mission.
is going to be a dark ass film, and they've even threw the promise out there that we're going to see a bigger and badder Vader. I mean, how do you say that, and then you want to have a film that's all jovial and happy?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
it's really odd.
Who knows,
It's
dude?
odd.
I mean, right now all we can do is pour hot air out of our gas bags. But I guess we'll figure out come December, or if it is as bad as everyone's making it out to be, like Nick said, maybe it gets pushed back. Unlike video games, I haven't seen many films of this magnitude get pushed back recently, especially when it's this close to a release. I mean, they made the flip with Star Wars Episode 8. They pushed it back a bit, but shit, it was still a year and a half out anyway, so big deal. Plus, they get it back onto a December rollout. So who knows? We'll find out December, everyone. As always, we appreciate you listening. Those of you that do listen, if you do, let us know. We'd like some feedback every once in a while. Topics you want us to talk about. We might not be the smartest Star Wars fans, but we're pretty fucking knowledgeable. My knowledge goes way back into some pretty random facts about the franchise. So, thanks for joining in. Let's reach out to the Force, my friends, and hope for the best. I'm going to try to stay positive about Rogue One, although my expectations have been lowered a bit. But time will tell. So, knock on wood, pull out those lightsabers, hope for the best. May the Force be with you always.